Today, we welcome back to the show Tina Erwin to talk about crystals. And Tina is a ghost helper and she's studied metaphysics all her life. Tina is the author of 8 books, including a 3-part series entitled Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View and Karma and Frequency. Tina's mission is to teach the living how to help the dead. Tina is a ghost magnet and helps the dead to cross over. And then Tina served 20 years in the United States Navy, and she worked with the U.S. Submarine Force. And then she retired at the commander level. And you can find Tina's books on Amazon and the following websites: TinaErwin.com and GhostHelpers.com is where you can find Tina. And welcome back to the show, Tina.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
Yeah, this is great.
I love being here. I love your show.
Oh, this is great. I love having you on. And so let's talk about crystals. And what are crystals?
There's so many jillions of forms of crystals, but they're basically chemical formations that are made within the earth. And sometimes they're in the sea or underwater. And these chemical structures take a variety of shapes and forms and that are unique to that particular crystal or that form. Some of them, they're just, well, let's take rose quartz, for example. Rose quartz just is like, here's a crystal, a rose quartz crystal ball. Oh. And it's just, when you mine it, it comes out in these huge, big chunks or slabs. It doesn't have a crystalline structure. So you're going to make it into something. I have some of these glued down. Something as beautiful as this, which is this just super soft pink. But this is called a flame crystal, and it's carved in Brazil to have a slight twist so that the energy comes out all around it as well as the tip. So that's just an example. But for instance, amethyst comes out where you have something like this pretty little guy, and where you have terminated points of amethyst. And some of them are really large, really big, and some of them are small. And then you see what are called, this is like a mini cathedral, but you have these massive cathedrals that are 6 to 10 feet tall, and they're like a geode, and you crack them open and you have like angel wing pairs of amethyst. And what makes this stone, what makes amethyst so purple is the amount of manganese in it. And that determines the grapey color. How dark is the amethyst? It's a chemistry issue. So let's say that rose quartz has manganese, but it's so pale that it goes to pink. It's just, each one of them are so different based on what's in them. For instance, let's take lapis. This is lapis from Afghanistan. I'm not sure if you can see how blue that is.
Yes, I can. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful stone.
I have a lot of pieces of lapis, but lapis has a large part of it is copper. And copper is really critical for the human body. And some people wear lapis beads. I have a really large piece of lapis. And when you think about stones and how they're used, if you think about your chakra system, some of the colors, it's like God made crystals because the colors help human bodies as well as the earth. So crystals can come in, for instance, this is what's called an amethyst fan.
Wow.
And it's a type of quartz. And what you see is that it has a little bit of manganese in it. So it's super pale. It's just really super pale. On the back of it, there's some green chloride that you can see coming through. So depending on the mineral that were present when the stone was formed, it can be anything. So these are super small, But when this one was formed, this is an Arkansas crystal, it 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 decided to be a cluster, not a separate point. But when this was separated from the matrix upon which it was growing, it decided to keep growing. And I'm going to kind of put this on an angle so you can see that it just keeps growing and crystals heal. So if you've got enough of a matrix, whether it's sandstone or limestone or whatever it's growing on, they're going to keep healing. And they're going to have just a variety of structures. Some of them are perfect cubes, which is like lead or zinc, or some of the others have these amazing cubes. Some of them have unusual shapes, which is bismuth, has some astounding shapes. So it's how they're, for instance, this one is a tumbled piece of tiger eye.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow.
And this is a really nice stone to keep in your pocket. It's just a soft tumbled stone, and it's a really good protection. We'll talk about protection later, but this is an example of a piece for protection. Shapes. This is what is called a Herkimer diamond. Actually, this was part of an enormous cluster, and it decided that it didn't want to be a cluster anymore. And one day it just separated right in front of me. So now I have two pieces. And what you can see with a Herkimer diamond is that it is water clear. And the energy of a Herkimer is so pure that it's like you almost can't believe it. I have another one up here. They're just such a pure, clean feel that it's just even hard to describe. I mean, you can begin to see how amazing they are.
It's
They
beautiful.
come from Herkimer, New York, and they grow in a matrix that, unlike crystals in Arkansas, which, this is an Arkansas crystal. They're bigger. Herkimer diamonds are small, and it can be a little bit slightly cloudy, and the matrix on the bottom can keep growing. But a Herkimer diamond is so clean. And the matrix in Arkansas or Brazil is red clay, which has a lot of iron oxide in it. But the matrix that Herkimer diamonds grow in is so hard. I want to say it's diorite. I could be wrong about that, but I don't even know how they get these out of the ground, but there's this massive amount of this dark gray diorite in this little tiny perfect crystal. I would love to go mine it, but you can only do it a couple months of the year. Otherwise, the ground is too hard, or the mosquitoes and everything get you too much.
Right. What is the Herkimer diamond? Is that what properties does it have? Protection or
Herkimer diamonds are really, they're an elevated stone.
mhm.
And while we're talking about figuring these things out, I wanted to point out that if anyone wants one of the best books on the market, it's Melody's book. Let me turn that. Love is in the Earth by Melody. And we used to own a crystal mine in Arkansas, and she had the mine next door. Hers was a green chloride mine. So if you wanted to find out about Herkimer diamonds, which I just happen to have here, bookmarked, let's see. A Herkimer diamond is known as an attunement stone. You can attune yourself with another person, an environment, or an activity. Let's see.
I
It
like
says
that.
that Herkimer diamond, it stimulates clairvoyant and clairaudient abilities and can assist one in prescience and in telepathic communication. It can retain information that you can retrieve later. And so some people who work in proximity to radioactive material can either wear or carry this stone as a form of protection and to facilitate the dissipation of harmful rays.
I wonder if
And
that would, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wonder if that would work for that 5G stuff that everybody's talking about.
that's a really good question. And I hope your audience will forgive me, but there are so many properties to stones, I just cannot commit them all to memory. And I,
Of
to
course
be able
not.
to use that as a reference is just, I mean, she's an amazing author. And there's some fantastic books out there as well.
Yeah, and what is the author's name again? I'm sorry.
It's a funny name.
Yeah.
It's here's on the bottom.
Oh,
It's
Melody.
Melody,
Yeah. Oh, just Melody.
just Melody.
Oh, okay. I didn't know she had
There's
a last name. That's why I asked.
she doesn't use a last name.
Okay,
So I
like,
thought that
yeah.
would be
I
kind
think
of
that's
interesting.
pretty. Yeah, that looks like a beautiful book.
Well, she has a newer one out. Mine is pretty old, and it's full of color plates of stones. And for people who love stones, that would be a great gift for someone. If someone says, "Oh, what should I get you?" Send them the Amazon link for Melody's book with the color plates in it. It's really beautiful. But you also have crystals like the one I'm wearing, which is a little hard to see, is an Archimer. We did get this from um, part of our mine. It's double terminated. And when you're looking at specifically quartz, double terminated means that it's terminated on both ends. So you can see the point on both ends.
Hmm.
I happen to be holding a Vogel crystal. Um, so this crystal was cut. It's a water clear crystal that was cut by one of the cutters who worked with Marcel Vogel. And I think it's really good to know who this man was. He was an IBM scientist who recognized the property of quartz crystals, and he made such breakthrough communication using crystals to communicate with plants, to change the properties of water. I was studying him more before this show, so thank you for helping me to kind of get more educated on that. And he was so highly revered by IBM that when he retired after 35 or 40 years with the company, people get a watch. He got an electron microscope, which is thousands and thousands of dollars. So he didn't just get some little gift. So what he said was, if you cut a and 10 years ago, this little tiny crystal was $200. And his point was, this is faceted all the way around. It's cut. So it has some specific number of cuts. Some people do 12. I think he did 24. And again, the numerology of the cuts give that crystal a greater sense of power. And it just projects energy because I have it sitting, I have a big roll top desk here, and it just is always projecting toward me when I'm working.
I like that. That's really great. Yeah. And so I don't know if you can just talk a little bit. You sort of did your background with crystals and your experience of owning a crystal mine in Arkansas.
Well, I was introduced to crystals. I mean, I always loved jewelry. I mean, what woman doesn't love jewelry, right? And diamonds and all the precious stones. And somebody says, "Oh, you should go to Quartzsite and see the crystals there." So I met one of the miners and I bought some crystal, and then I went back another year and I bought more crystal, and he said, "Gee, would you like to own a mine in Arkansas?" And I looked around to see who he was talking to. I said, "I live in San Diego. Why, how could I possibly have a mine?" He said, "Well, you can't mine it all year, most of the year anyway. The summer's too hot and the winter's too cold. But there's this window of time, and so my siblings and I went together and we bought the mine. We flew out to Mount Ida, Arkansas, which is 35 miles from Hot Springs, which is about, I don't know, a couple hours from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Mhm.
And when you walk into a crystal mine there, it's like you walked onto an X-Files set. That's the only way I can describe it. It just looks like mountains of red clay.
Wow.
And mountains of red clay. And you are so close to nature doesn't really cut it. You're close to the earth. You're feeling it. If you ever have an opportunity to mine, and be really careful, because mining can be extremely dangerous. The Bureau of Mines and the Bureau of Land Management are very careful with people own mines. But this is open pit mining, and there are very specific laws that accrue to that. So we bought a property next to the miners' property. So we wanted to see, what does it take to mine? And we picked a few pieces that were right on top. But we spent all our time working with the miner, and we never really did open our mine. So we eventually, after I guess about 10 years, returned it, gifted it back to the Forest Service with the caveat that if anybody else wanted to purchase it or open it, we had first right of refusal so that it would stay unopened, because there's a concept that maybe not all crystals should come out of the earth. And it's an important concept because the Chinese were buying crystal from Arkansas and filling these giant, sea crates that you see on the ocean transports, these giant, multicolored, look like Legos, packing them. You know how big one of these sea crates is, floor to ceiling with quartz, and taking them back to China for whatever the electronics were that they were making. So, and the Chinese mine their own quartz crystal as well. They have enormous mines. So they're trying to pull as much as they possibly can. So we kind of hope that maybe ours stays not quite so open.
Right, I agree.
But it is to get the orange mud off of the crystal, it comes out of the ground. And it doesn't look like this. It's covered in orange, dark orange mud and all of the iron that's in that. So you hose it off, but it doesn't get it all off. So the miners, that's part of the reason crystals are expensive. The miners have to use something called oxalic acid to soak these crystals in. But oxalic acid destroys your kidneys. So it's extremely dangerous. That's why mining's best left to real miners. We had a blast. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, going and digging and finding them. And when it rained, if what you saw was black, oh my gosh, the crystal was clear and you got a great specimen. It's the best treasure hunt of all, is to do that if people like crystal. And Mount Ida, they take people on into some of the mines, and you can get buckets and dig all day. It's so much fun.
How fun. And just a few questions within a question. How big are these mines? And how many crystals are in a mine? And is the mine actually underground? I'm assuming it is.
Each mine it's a 5-acre plot, except the largest quartz crystal mine in the United States is owned by, gotta think of his name. I'll think of it. They own the largest mine, and it's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's over 20 to 30 acres. It's also open pit mining, and it's so vast. And they have crystal balls that are 5 feet tall in diameter. They're gigantic. They have earth keeper crystals that are 6 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide. They have clusters that drop your jaw. I was Coleman. It's Coleman's mine. Jimmy Coleman's mine. I met him a couple times. He's at the Tucson Gem Show. He's at the Quartzsite Gem Show for any of your listeners. I was in his special room. They pulled out a cluster that was 10 feet long, 6 feet tall, and 3 feet deep. And it was covered with crystal. I mean, one of my brothers stood next to it, and it just kept going. And all I could think of was, how did you get this out of the ground? Oh my gosh. And the Coleman mine is the source of something called a Mac Earl crystal. And Mac Earl crystals, Jimmy Coleman bought the rights from a guy named Mac Earl. It's the South. So he bought the rights from Mac Earl for his Mac Earl crystals in a special mine. They are water clear. So if NASA wants to grow a crystal, they get Mac Earl crystals because they are so water clear that when a crystal is super clear, they transmit energy so much better, so much faster, and with less distortion than something that is clouded or it has inclusions in it.
I see.
So does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it does. I like that. And how are crystals used today?
Every single piece of electronic that you can think of has quartz crystal in it. And they started using quartz back in Atlantis and Lemuria. So they've been around for as long as human beings have walked the earth. But in more modern times, they were the basis of crystal radio sets in World War II.
Okay.
They found that quartz crystal and something called selenite, which is a wonderful stone, all fiber optic cable. Think about the volume of fiber optic cable around the world. All fiber optic cable is made with selenite. But they started using quartz crystal to make crystal radio sets that could transmit the energy. Well, they probably had a lot of reverse engineered technology from a lot of the spacecraft that they found. And so now they know how to do nanotechnology using crystal and gold to transmit energy faster, cleaner, smoother, and smaller, to the point you can inject it in someone in all kinds of ways. So quartz crystal is critical in today's world. So when let's give a very practical example for your listeners. If you think about your car is full of quartz crystal, and it's full of mined ore in the stainless steel, the chrome, the all of the metals that are in your car. So when you get in your car and you say, oh, I just love this car, you're sending an energy to all of those earth elements, and they pick up the vibration of the love you have for your car. And if you get in and say, God bless, I hate this car. Why did I buy this? This car will break down. And I got this from my son, who's a master mechanic. He was a master mechanic for BMW and for Rolls-Royce. And he said, people who hate their cars are always breaking down. People who love their cars, they just come in for routine maintenance. There's nothing.
Wow.
I mean, he said, you had that BMW 20 years, car never broke down on you, not one time. I said, yeah, I just adored the car. So the energy you put, whether it's what you put into your kids or you put into your car or you put into your food. In fact, I have quartz crystal surrounding my stove. It's a very odd kitchen. I have so
I'd
much
like to see
crystal,
that.
so much crystal in my kitchen. I have a huge, big salt lamp in my kitchen to keep the air clean. And if you love cooking, then the energy from the crystal is going right into your food. And you can use it in such as what would seem like a mundane way, but that's one of the ways you can use it.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I love to cook too. I make famous homemade pot pies, chicken pot pies.
Well, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's good. I was just going to ask you, you brought up a salt lamp, and I tell my listeners, and I have a salt lamp too in my office. What are salt lamps good for? What do you recommend them for? I'm just curious.
My one of my granddaughters was chuckling. She says, Grandma, you have salt lamps in practically every room. And I found a place that sells big salt lamps that you need 2 arms to hold. Salt lamps put out negative ions, which means they're constantly cleaning your air. They mitigate electromagnetic waves. I have a glowing salt lamp ball right right next to this computer. And I have them in my kitchen. I have them in my back hall. I have them in my living room and in bedrooms and up and down the stairs. And there's always a salt lamp on somewhere. So they're always cleansing your air. Not that I need it that much because we live in the Pacific Northwest and the air is fantastic here,
Mhm.
but it never hurts to have a little bit more. But there's another element here. Every one of these crystal clusters is also its own ionizer. It puts out negative ions. And I have crystal clusters all over the house. I have a huge one over to the right of me. It's kind of
Uh-huh.
my command center.
Mhm.
So and I wouldn't have believed this, but we used to bring back a ton of crystal when we'd go to Arkansas, and all my friends in San Diego bought crystal. So a friend of mine had an ionizer in her house, and so she put the crystal about 2 feet away from the ionizer. She thought her ionizer broke. It kept turning off, and she turned it on and it just turned off. And I said, take the crystal out to your garage. So she took the crystal to the garage, and the ionizer stayed on. She said, you mean I don't need this? And I said, it's nature's way of cleaning the air, when it comes to the surface. So what a cool concept.
Yes, it is. I love that. So we recommend that the listeners get salt lamps.
Salt lamps and
That's good.
crystals. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
salt
definitely.
lamps are, but make sure you keep a light bulb on inside of them because if you
Right.
live in a humid environment, they will start to dissolve.
Okay.
That little bit of heat from the light bulb inside
Hmm.
keeps them, mitigates the humidity enough that you don't have a problem.
Right. I have a light bulb inside mine. It turns different colors. Like it'll go
That's cool.
blue or yellow. Yeah, it's really neat. And oh, can you talk about the historical perspective of crystals, such as the use in Atlantis?
In Atlantis, crystals were used and grown on an epic level. They had what were called the great crystals, and some of them were red because they have such huge. Some of the red crystals, I don't know if those were rubies, but they were on top of these huge points. Like if you had, I have so many points, but let's say you have this point, but this point is 100 feet tall and it's red and it's emanating. And you could put these crystals on top of pyramids, and there are pyramids all over the planet. If you think about it, the pyramid structure in theme and variation, this is a shungite piece. This is a shungite pyramid, which is constantly, it's 98% pure carbon, and it grows in Karelia, Russia. It's the only place I know of that you can get shungite. And if you love it, you could carry like a small piece of it with you because like this is called elite shungite. It has that shine, and you could carry it in a little bag, and it is very, very protective, this shungite. But they were used for healing. In Atlantis, they had what would be known as a healing chamber. And one of the stones they used tremendously in Atlantis was emerald. And the emerald healing table was well known by people who remember it. And it was huge. It was the size of any examination table you'd see in any doctor's office, a solid piece of crystal. But when you laid on it, it wasn't cold and hard. And emerald is not a very hard stone. You have to be careful with emerald as it'll chip. And when you laid on this stone, this energy would emanate up through based on the programming of whoever was working on the healing. They also used light. I'm sure they also used far infrared that also assisted in healing. And emerald, the true gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, semi-precious topaz, and in the blue and the golden and the imperial topaz, Tanzanite, which was not discovered in it. I don't know that they had Tanzanite in Atlantis, but some of these were of enormous strength and value. And these were stones that were in the original breastplate of the 12 tribes that circulated all over the world. And they're discussed in the Edgar Cayce readings. They were used in Lemuria. Let's see, in the 12 tribes breastplate, there's a lot of controversy on what the stones were, but there is some agreement that they used ruby, emerald, topaz, sapphire, carnelian, turquoise, and amethyst, and maybe rose quartz. Those are the ones that most people agree on, but there's a lot of controversy. The Bible talks about it. A lot of teachings talk about it. Depends on how you translate it. But the major stones, the major gemstones were the ones that were among the most valued because and there was some discussion about beings that may not necessarily have been from here who had looked like a belt buckle, but it was big. And it had all these crystals and the working with those crystals. And yes, and some of them were quartz, enabled that being to have unusual powers. And there's some historical record for that. So these stones can transmit energy, they can heal your body. It's whatever you're in resonance with. And the colors of stones directly relate, what you feel you need is directly related to the chakra that may have that need.
I see. Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's really neat. And what are the various crystal shapes and forms? We kind of talked about that, but
well, you have the crystal, and you have the points. You can just find points all over the ground in Arkansas and in Brazil. Diamonds come in an octahedral shape. So let me grab.
Yeah, sure.
Let me grab some platonic solids here. It's a set of what are called platonic solids. And the set includes, this is an octahedron. And many times you will see a diamond. So this is a basic pyramid, basically bottom to bottom. So if I can hold it, because this piece is heavy.
Beautiful.
And so it's really a pretty piece. This is part of what's called platonic solids. And there's some of the solids that appear in nature. You have some crystals that are perfect cubes. If I hear one more person say, there's no straight lines in nature, of course there are. Selenite grows in a straight line. Some of them grow in perfect cubes.
That's amazing. I love that. I've never seen a cubed crystal.
Well,
That's
crystals
awesome.
don't always come in these cubes, but there are other minerals that come in cubes. Sometimes you'll see diamonds in tetrahedrons. And a tetrahedron is one of the most powerful shapes in all of the known world. And this shape works in many, many dimensions. I'll just say that. And this is an equilateral triangle. What makes a tetrahedron remarkable and, magical for me is it has four equilateral triangles. So you have four faces and a base, which is super
Beautiful.
cool.
Looks almost like a prism. Would you say that, or?
It could be a prism. It could surely be a prism. It's always reflecting light, and light charges crystals, so it's a wonderful thing. Some of them grow in polyhedra shapes. So these are five-sided faces. It's a very unusual. I mean, each one of these pieces was $70 to $80 each piece. And that was like 6 years ago. So if you could even find them, I found these in quartzite from one guy. It's like finding the shungite. There was only one guy that sold it. There was a guy that was selling massive clusters from a mine in Mexico. Oh my God, Mexico has so much. And the crystal is bent. it comes in circles. They come from a cave, and it became a crystal, but the force of water caused it to have soft edges around it. Now, the Tibetans for thousands of years have used crystal, but they have some that are really, really important for them. And one of the ones they use, and I'm going to show you two Tibetan bracelets, if it's okay to talk about jewelry.
Of course.
This is, and you can find Tibetan bracelets on Etsy. And I'm just saying that because there's a lot of these craftsmen on Etsy, and it took months to get these. But the energy from Tibet, and I think they probably need the money after the Tibet earthquake several years ago. They use coral, red coral, and they use turquoise and brass. And brass is a alloy of copper and zinc. And some of them use silver. So they use specific carved shapes in their bracelets. This is another one which almost looks like it's Navajo or Native American, but it is from Tibet based on the design. And here again, what you're seeing are turquoise and coral. Although sometimes what I'm wearing here is a ring. This is a Tibetan ring.
I love that. I love
This
that piece.
has, yeah, this piece has embedded turquoise and carnelian. So
Nice.
turquoise, and it's a brass ring. So it turquoise brings balance to the body. Native people have used turquoise for thousands of years for themselves and for their animals. So especially walking down the Grand Canyon, so that the animals would not lose their balance. And carnelian is a blood cleanser. There are some people with sinus problems that hold carnelian and they just get better overnight. And stones and metals have some astounding properties. If you think you have a cold coming on, get a copper rod. I mean, it has to be pure copper, and just hold it. Let's hold it for about 30 minutes and you will not have a cold anymore, because copper realigns the electrical system in the body and kills the bacteria. I wouldn't have believed this was true, but I've tried it several times and it was amazing.
Wow.
I just recently learned that.
That's cool. I was going to ask, where could the audience get copper? I mean, before you answer that, I wanted to say I'm from Michigan. They have copper mines there in northern Michigan.
Well, it took me a while to find it. And the rods are about this big, and they're about, I don't know, half inch in diameter, and they're round. So they fit in your hand. And I had read this somewhere because, like you, I'm always studying. You can never learn it all. Always learn something new. So I ordered 2 copper rods on Etsy. It was the only place I could find them. They guaranteed to be 100% pure copper. And they're pure copper because they work. Well, I found out the seller was in Ukraine. And I was stunned. So I said, oh my gosh, there's a war there. And I said, how could you possibly ship this to me? And he said, post office is fine. It's not a problem for us. It's okay. We're not having any, war problems where we are here in Ukraine. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the twilight zone.
Right.
And this was last December of 22. He's telling me this. And he communicated with me. They arrived exactly when he said they would, in perfect shape. And I certainly gave him a good review on Etsy, and I was really stunned. So
that's amazing. Wow. So
yeah.
You can get them on Etsy, and they're called copper wads.
Rods.
Rods.
Yeah. They're just pieces of copper.
Okay,
you can go to Home Depot and they're copper coated if you want pure copper. And there's another interesting thing about copper, which I think is really good to pay attention to. There's a lot of controversy about this, so each person should do their own research to decide what's best for them. But in India, I was in a shop in Portland and met a guy from India, and he was explaining to me that they have these beautiful copper bottles, copper inside and out. And he said every Indian family starts their day drinking copper water. And he said it just charges us, and we don't get sick. You don't see plague sweeping India. They have methodologies. And he said, well, it just keeps you healthy. That was all. He didn't make any outlandish claims. Oh, it's a healing thing. It just kind of keeps you healthy. So my husband and I've been doing it for several years now, and it kind of keeps you healthy. It's kind of amazing.
Wow, that's amazing.
So go ahead.
Oh, going back to the Tibetan bracelets, how could those help people?
Well, coral can be the sometimes it's coral, sometimes it's carnelian in their jewelry. And the design has to appeal to you because there is sacred geometry in the design.
I noticed
And
that actually,
and
yeah.
and the sequence of the pieces in between that you saw on both of them, which you also see in Navajo and Hopi jewelry and Zuni, sometimes Zuni pieces. I'm not expert in Native American jewelry, but I spent a lot of time in the Southwest, so I've seen quite a bit. A lot of craftsmanship, but the Tibetan feel for me resonates with me. For instance, I have some unusual Tibetan bracelets, which this is this is a form of agate or carnelian. I'm not sure, but it could also be an inexpensive jade. And what you see is
Beautiful.
there are carvings on it. And this one is adjustable. And this is carnelian. This one is carnelian, turquoise, and coral. And basically what they do is they help to keep you in balance. This is so big. I can't, even if I tighten it, I can't wear it, but I keep it near me just because they emit. I like the Tibetan bracelets because the geometries of the design emits an energy that's magnified by the use of turquoise and carnelian or coral.
Oh, I see.
So when I go out, I wear those bracelets. I use bracelets for protection all the time.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. Just kind of going back, you mentioned while we were talking the Tucson Gem Show, and I actually know a colleague that was just there. Do you know anything about that or when it is? Or I think it's happening now or
The
recently?
Tucson Gem Show is happening now. The Smithsonian actually has an exhibit of 1920s jewelry. God, I would love to go, but I think my husband would pass out if I went. But it is the premier rock and mineral show for the world, is the Tucson Gem Show. I mean, it's really hard to get a hotel room anywhere in Tucson, and it's so gigantic, it covers several hotels. And they bring the most astounding amethyst cathedrals from Brazil and these shooting, for instance, I don't know if you can see this piece, but
Yes.
this entire piece is covered with rutilated quartz. I
Oh,
mean, with
wow.
rutiles. It's like somebody spun gold inside of it.
Beautiful.
It's just a great piece. And you'll see carved pieces, but they will, for instance, the amethyst fan that I showed you, well, they might have one that's 10 times that size. They might have, tourmaline, watermelon tourmaline spires shooting out of a crystal that might be 10 inches long. It's impossible to describe the visual of what's at the Tucson Gem Show. I've seen, if you go on I mean, you can just Google Tucson Gem Show images
Okay.
on just on the internet. You can see such an astounding view of what is there. And plus they have minerals and they have, they're going to have beads, of course, but it's really the most astounding pieces for collectors. And you have people, there was a guy who in Malibu, when I lived in California, in Malibu, who he had so many pieces from the Jimmy Coleman mine in Mount Ida that filled his office. I mean, it just took your breath away. The energy is just pulsating. These pieces were like 4 and 5 feet tall, massive clusters. And so I said, I'm really impressed with your collection. And I knew where they were from. And he said, well, most people wouldn't know that. But he said, yeah, he said, we take whatever we can get from them. And they never have a problem selling their stuff. People come from all over the world. And so you have people who are buying rose quartz, enormous pieces. They're buying, there are people who come with amber. If you have never used amber, it's this Baltic amber. Make sure if you're going to use it, it's Baltic. Baltic amber emits, it's like a gas. And women all over Europe put it around their babies, and their babies don't cry as much when they're wearing amber. So if you're in a stressful situation, get some amber, Baltic amber beaded necklaces or a good amber piece. Wear it against your skin, and it's extremely calming.
Wow. Is that your birthstone, Amber?
No, my birthstone's topaz.
So, okay.
And I have some very nice topaz pieces
I'm
as well.
sure. Wow, beautiful.
But you can get shungite bracelets. You can get tourmaline bracelets, not tourmaline, turquoise, howlite. Howlite is this white stone. It kind of looks like marble, but it isn't. Here's a little howlite angel. Has this gray element that goes through it. Howlite in your pocket makes people be nice to you.
How do you spell that? Let me write this down.
Oh my gosh. Howlite. It's like you're howling. HOWLITE. And I had a metaphysical group in San Diego, and we do experiments. And so I had some tumbled pieces of howlite, and they said, well, I have the nastiest boss in the world. And I said, so let's do an experiment. What's the worst? Put 2 pieces of howlite in each pocket. It was a guy, and go to work. Tell me what happens. So that they came back the next time, and they said, it's the first time my boss has ever been nice to me. And I kind of didn't know how to react. And other people tried it, and they came back with the same stories. You're not doing anything detrimental to a negative person. You're just shifting. You can't change someone else. You can only change yourself. So if you use a stone that causes you to emit something so positive that the person's reacting to you in a positive way, one, you followed spiritual law, but number 2, isn't your day happier?
Yes. Wonder if you could put it in your car too. Maybe the drivers would, let you in, or
That's a very good idea.
Here, you can have this parking spot.
Yes, but this is a good idea, because your car is going to take on the energy of whatever is inside of it.
Exactly. Did you want to talk a little bit more about Marcel Vogel from IBM? And it's a he, right?
Marcel Vogel was he died I think about 10 years ago. He was teaching people how to use crystal in electronics. And for instance, if you take like this Vogel crystal and you put it in something where you can spin water around it, you could probably put it in a glass, which I've got this one is completely encased, so I don't chip those edges, those points, and swirl water around it, and you would charge the water, which would be something pretty astounding. Or there's certain machines that are like blenders, but they're not blenders, and they do so many revolutions a minute, and they charge the water. And the better your water, the better your body. And those were some of the things that Marcel Vogel saw,
Hmm.
but and I don't think he ever worked with Masaru Emoto, who talked about messages from water. Water is alive. Vogel found that too. So if something is alive and you give it something positive, then that energy of that life is enhanced. So if you are you're like 92% water when you're born. That's why babies have such phenomenal skin. But as you get older, the percentage of water in the body drops. But what if whatever percentage you have is enhanced through the crystal you're wearing? For instance, I have, and lots of people sell these, I think. I have a gold rutilated bracelet, which it's a very healing piece. Or you're surrounding your body in your house with as much crystal as you can choose to afford. And then if you're doing spiritual practices where you're filling your house with either beautiful music or, you're doing meditations and you're filling it with blessing and prayer, every crystal in your house will vibrate that energy, and it just ricochets all over your house, into your body, into the water in your cells, and right down to your blood supply. So it keeps you healthier longer, and you're doing this for yourself.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. And so can you talk about maybe how people can have a crystal collection and how maybe you started your collection?
Crystals, I've decided that crystals are like people. They have a personality, and they're attracted to certain personalities. I must have a crystal personality. I have thousands of them. um, it's you see a piece and it calls to you. Or I had a lot of unusual opportunities. People would bring me things, or when we saw the opportunity for the crystal mine and it seemed completely outlandish and crazy, and it was a risk. We're here for the experience, and it was one of the most fantastic experiences. And I would go into the rock shops in Mount Ida and in Hot Springs, and I mean, your jaw just hits the floor. You can't believe this stuff comes from the earth. And there's all shapes and sizes. There's just huge points. I mean, I can't even lift it. I have a point I had a client in Arkansas, and he couldn't pay me. So he sent me a point that's this tall. So it's kind of my sentinel piece over here. That was a great payment.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And I'd go to Quartzsite when Quartzsite used to have a huge show. It wasn't Tucson, but you could still find some amazing pieces. And I found Herkimer diamond necklaces. Or for instance, I found this beautiful little cluster,
Oh, beautiful.
beautiful little cluster, and I had it wire wrapped, and I wear it occasionally.
I love
Um,
that. That's beautiful.
I also wanted to point out that every now and then you'll see someone who has jade. This is just a piece of jade. Actually, this belonged to my mother-in-law. It was in her collection of she had very little jewelry, but I wanted to take a second, if it's possible, to talk about the protective qualities of jade.
Yes, I have two things of jade, just to let you know. So jade's neat, but if you could talk about it, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
When my brother lived in Los Angeles, he said, you really ought to go to Chinatown. So when I was in Chinatown, um, I I met this man, and he said, uh, this is a piece of green quartz. Isn't that pretty?
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yes. And this is again in this tetrahedral form. I do think that's polished, but I have him sitting atop a jade scarab.
Oh my goodness, that's really, really pretty.
And um, jade has this property that a lot of Asian cultures believe in to their core, and they will tell you story after story. that if you wear a piece of jade on your body, the jade is so protective, it will take the hit for you. And one of the shopkeepers, I love shopping. I shop all over the place. So, and I love talking to the shopkeepers, especially if they're the buyer and they know their product. And this guy said, well, you know what jade does. Jade takes it takes the fall for you. And he said, I have this jade cricket on my belt buckle and it's broken 3 times and I glue it back together. And when it breaks, it means I've been saved from dying. And he said, and every time it broke, it was in an accident, and the jade absorbed the energy of the accident, and I was fine, but I should have been injured. And then I started reading other people talk about it, and this apparently is common. I've heard this over and over and over. And I don't think it has to do with whether your culture is Asian or not. I think it has to do with that the properties of jade apply to anyone who is able to find it, or encounter it in some way. It's kind of cool.
Wow, that is really cool. I like that.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
have to wear mine.
I mean, if you know someone who's in law enforcement, this might be a really good thing to have in their pockets.
Exactly. Hey, that's a great idea.
That, jade and howlite and, make a little, safety bag and put all these great pieces in it to jade and howlite and black tourmaline and shungite that keep in tiger eye that really can keep you in a safer place.
Exactly. Oh, that's great. Oh, and then, speaking of that, we're sort of talking about protection. Did you want to talk about stones for protection in addition to some of the ones you listed, or?
Well, a lot of people use carnelian for protection, and I think that some people use turquoise as well. I think the Tibetans use turquoise a lot for that purpose. Again, Native people did use it. I'm a huge fan of black tourmaline, including for your home. I have a huge piece at my front door. Coral is considered protective. Lapis, because of the copper. Copper keeps your electrical system in your body functioning well. A lot of people use lapis beads. Beads, think about Native people have been using beads. I have several black tourmaline necklaces, beautiful shiny beads. Shungite beads, which I have here somewhere. Shungite beads are kind of a dull black. They're not shiny. This
Right.
piece is shiny, but the rest of them aren't. I think that you if you have a collection of stones and you're going to go out that day and you reach for them, see what your hand goes to first, and then use that and see how that works. Sometimes I might wear this one with the rutilated quartz just an awful lot, but then I might wear this one that has lepidolite for clearing and howlite and pearl. That's another thing that it can be enormously protective are pearls. And pearls can help you with a headache. A lot of people wear pearls because the luster on pearls acts like a mirror and sends energy away. And if you notice, royalty cannot be separated from their pearls. You ever wonder about that?
Yes.
Yes, they make you look elegant. It's certainly no question it's an aesthetics issue. But what if it was more than that? They've been using pearls, for instance, seed pearls come from the Persian Gulf. That was in Bahrain several years ago. Feels like another lifetime ago. And people used pearls. I mean, the queens of England, Elizabeth I and II, had incredible collections of pearls. They were worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And this is before people were getting pearls from, the Pacific, and the 1400s, they didn't go to the pearl divers in the Philippines or Okinawa or all those places. So I don't know where they got their pearls. A lot of them were from the Persian Gulf, probably, but they are really, really powerful. more than you might think. And no, it's not old fashioned. I think pearls can be fun and really, really helpful for people.
Exactly. They probably wear them on their crown too, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
one of the Princess Diana crowns had I forget what they called it. She was wearing this particular crown when she had the Elvis outfit with that white collar that stood
Mhm.
straight up like this. And there were like little pearl droplets in this crown. And it was something she really, really wore. So they do wear them in crowns, they embed them in their pins, and they are if cared for, they last hundreds of years. They are inheritable assets. Pearls are.
Yeah, I think Jackie Kennedy Onassis wore a lot of pearls too, if I remember correctly.
Well, right. It
Mhm.
elevates it indicates an elevated station.
Mhm.
But I've had people say that they wore pearls and people treated them better.
Mm.
And it's as if they dressed up. A lot of people don't get out of pajamas. But for people who want to project, think about it. If you want to project a professional look, take a really hard look at the jewelry that you're using.
Mm.
If you're a guy, and I've had some men be really savvy, I'll use that term, savvy about it. They take these little when my husband was at sea, I made these little bags, and he had certain that stones in the bag that it was always in his pocket, so it didn't like he was wearing something. Just because I felt like it isn't going to hurt you. A little help here and there is a good thing. And
Exactly.
Native American people always had these little medicine bags that they wore, and so how does it work? If you have a bag like this and you have it in your pocket, or you're wearing pearls, or you're wearing any of this jewelry, how is it working? It works on your auric field. I realize I left this big puzzle piece out. People are going, why does it work?
Mhm.
Because you have a force field. If you go to the mall, somebody's always taking a picture of your auric field, and they'll go, oh, it's a beautiful blue green. But if somebody cuts you off in traffic, it's going to be red. Let me guarantee you, it's constantly changing. So if you want to keep your auric field intact and protected from people coming toward you, then these devices affect your entire body, your whole body system. I have had several occasions where I was wearing, several beaded necklaces of black tourmaline, and people who I knew were super negative with very negative intent would not come near me. So um, it's kind of a surprising thing.
Yeah, it is, but it's remarkable.
Yeah. And if you can look at it that way, then it's like using copper. When you're holding on to copper, you are allowing that to affect it goes down these meridian levels through the electrical system of the body, goes throughout the body. It's just
Mhm.
kind of amazing. Um, that's my mailman.
Right. I've noticed that they advertise for copper socks or copper bracelets or things like that, like for
They help people with
yeah.
they help people
Mhm.
with arthritis, especially rheumatoid arthritis. I don't have arthritis, so I'm really fortunate. Um, but what if how is it helping? It affects the electrical system in the body. So I think the metaphysical element is great, but it's also super cool to be able to understand chemically what is it doing. And there are some stones that you find, not for me. I'm not a fan of garnet, but garnet is a really powerful and wonderful stone. I don't own any sapphires. Sapphires don't do anything for me. I don't have a problem having a voice. But when you think about the stones, let's go back to Princess Diana. Of all the stones in the world she could pick, she picked sapphire. Sapphire is blue for the throat chakra. She didn't have a voice in her life. She
Yeah.
was a person who felt like she wasn't heard. No one heard her except the people she was helping, and they did hear her. So she
Right.
picks this giant sapphire in this ring
Mm-hmm.
from a catalog. It wasn't like it was designed for her. She picked it out of a catalog. And no other member of the royal family had a ring like that. So the
Wow.
current Princess of Wales is wearing that.
Kate.
And
Mm-hmm.
Kate is wearing that ring. And if you look at the stones you're attracted to, they reflect the chakra that has the most need of that color. So topaz is going to be for, liver, kidney, spleen. Spleen is blood, but carnelian would be for spleen because you make a lot of blood cells are made there. Ruby, I dearly love ruby. I have a pair of little tiny earrings that I got in Italy, and I wear them constantly. Ruby provides enormous energy. It's a root chakra energy. Ruby helps the creative force. So if you're a writer or an artist, or you have a speech writer, Ruby can be really helpful.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. And just going back to Princess Diana, she picked sapphire, but sapphire wasn't her birthstone. She was a Cancer, and her birthday was in July. And so I think her birthstone would have been ruby, right? In July. I'm not
I
sure,
honestly
but
I don't remember.
right. But
I think she
yeah,
needed the strength
right.
to find her voice.
Of course. Right. So there was she didn't pick it because it was her birthstone. She just picked it. It's interesting how she picked that. I thought that was
I think
interesting.
that's a really
Yeah.
good point because it was
Mhm.
not her birthstone.
Mhm.
She could have picked peridot. Peridot is a great stone, green for the heart chakra. Or she could have picked a big freaking emerald
Yeah,
because
right.
she was the queen of hearts.
Mhm.
Or, a ruby light, that soft pinkish ruby would have been amazing for the heart chakra too, and the root chakra. But she picked blue because she needed a voice. A lot of people use amethyst for third eye. I like tanzanite for a third eye. Um, and for crown, of course, diamond. But if you
Yeah.
can't afford all those all those
It's
gemstones,
it's funny because Harry's a Virgo prince, or he's not Prince Harry anymore. What is he? The Duke of Sussex or whatever. But his birthstone is sapphire, and because he's a Virgo, I think he's a September baby. So
yeah.
it's interesting. I like that. And so, how do you care and clear your crystals? How do you care for your crystals and clear your crystals and other stones?
I since if you're a person who ends up collecting a lot of them, then that becomes quite problematic. And it's nice to be able to wash them at least once a year. I would love to say, oh, wash them all the time. But if you have thousands of them, not going to happen. If you just buy one, wash it in warm soapy water, sit it in the sun, and you will clean it and kind of charge it in the sun. Another way to clear stones, some people bury them in the earth. The earth absorbs a lot of negativity and will clear stones. Um, if you have a stone, and let's say that someone gives you a stone or you inherit a piece of antique jewelry, let's just say, and this happened to me. My mother gave me an emerald ring. And I love that ring because I actually bought it for myself, and she saw it and said, "Oh, can I have this?" And I said, "Sure." I just gave it to her. And she wore it for a lot of years. She said, "I'm giving it back to you." And every time I put it on, it made me physically sick. So I said, I had to clear this ring. It took me 6 months. It had absorbed so much of her sadnesses or her depressions or her trials that it was not comfortable for me. Be very, very careful of antique jewelry. So I did the thing where you wash it and I put different oils on it. I did use pennyroyal. But even in pennyroyal, if you're going to use pennyroyal, which is hard to find, but it works really well, wear plastic gloves that you can throw out because it's toxic. But by God, it will clear a crystal. And pay attention to whether or not the crystal, you wouldn't want to use this stuff on opal. Opal has a water element that you'll destroy it. You don't want to put opal and salt or salt water, and you certainly don't want to put your pearls there either. So you need to be very mindful, or the metal. Some metals don't like being hydrogen peroxide, by the way. You can soak your jewelry in hydrogen peroxide or some of your stones, and it will clean them. You just can't believe how much it cleans. But not all metal likes hydrogen peroxide, so it will discolor your metals. So again, you can put your stones in a rushing stream. Let's say you've got a little waterfall in your backyard. That's really good. You can take a bag of them to the sea and just let the salt water wash over them. That's enormously healing. And will really, really clear them. Charging a stone, there's some fun ways to do that. And one of them is through crystal singing bowls or Tibetan singing bowls, the metal ones, or play beautiful music, like the most beautiful. Some of the new age music is just astounding. Some of the gorgeous mantras, some of the Lemurian mantras don't do anything for me, but the Atlantean ones, I'm all over that. Depends on what your resonance is. Some of the opera singers, maybe you don't like opera, but your stones would just come alive with that frequency. What you're looking for is charge your stones with something that's a high frequency. What about frankincense oil? Just some, a dot here and there of frankincense. If you wanted a combination of frankincense and myrrh, because wink, wink, myrrh turbocharges frankincense oil. That's why frankincense and myrrh were given to Christ at the Nativity by the three magicians, the three magi. So there are some beautiful ways to charge your stones and to keep them cleared. Now, if you wear jewelry, and let's say you ever go to the mall and you come back and you are wiped out. You ever feel that?
Yes, definitely, for sure.
Well, your auric field is colliding with the auric fields of everybody else, and your subconscious is going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, I'm holding my own. It's like, oh, now we're home. Oh my gosh, I can relax.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wearing a lot of stones for protection and deflection, you won't be quite as tired, and your auric field won't be quite as difficult. But bathing with salt, especially at night, so you enter the sleep state really clean. It's like bathing your crystals in salt water. All of those things are really, really helpful.
Yeah.
You wash all of that away, especially your feet. So those are, and when you have jewelry, shungite, there's a Carillion website, and they sell plates and bowls, and they sell these beautiful black angel wings. And carbon cleans a lot of stuff. And put your jewelry on that. There are several things that clear. There's a biogeometry plate. It's a clearing plate. And biogeometry.org is a place you can find that if they still sell them. And the clearing plate looks, I have to take it out of here. I don't have a cleaner one. I use mine all the time, but it's just a silver plate. You'd have to get it from, in your travels, you will find sacred geometry images and devices that clear whatever is near them. I have about 5 or 6 of them, and I keep some crystals on it all the time, which clears and it charges, and so they're always emitting. If you do blessing and prayer at the end of your day, or you wake up in the morning and you just fill your house with the light of God,
Right.
then, or you pour love out to the world, or you play prayers. Maybe you don't want to say the prayers, you just play the prayers. You are filling your crystal with the energy of love, and that charges them and gives them a special power to then echo out to you and anyone who comes in contact with them all day.
Sure.
I had people come into my house in San Diego, and actually it's happened up here in Washington, and they go, God, I was so tired and I feel completely charged now that I'm here. I just feel so much better. It's like, I'm so glad.
So if someone was going to the mall or Disneyland, what stones would you recommend maybe they carry to avoid being, burned out or
Black tourmaline, the end of the day.
okay.
If you have Tibetan bracelets, those problem is people go to Disneyland in t-shirts and shorts,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Florida or Anaheim. So probably not going to wear pearls.
Yeah.
So that's out. And if you don't want to be obtrusive about stuff, just get a little pouch and stick it in your cleavage if you have one, or put it in your pocket, put it in your purse. You're holding your purse onto your body, and that's acting as a deflection. Wear a piece of jade, that sometimes jade can be kind of casual, and
Mm-hmm.
just be conscious of trying to be fashion conscious. Like I say, you're not going to wear pearls to Disneyland,
No.
unless you're going to be, Cinderella or Snow White or something.
Right. Yeah. What about howlite? You could bring howlite there. Maybe people would be
Well, if
nice to
you
you.
have, yeah, I mean, you could, I would wear bracelets,
Yeah.
howlite bracelets, turquoise bracelets, a lot of
Yeah.
turquoise, a lot of things
Beautiful.
are howlite, but they're dyed to look like turquoise. So if the merchant you buy them from is honest, then they'll tell you, looks like turquoise, it's really howlite. Well, you know what you're getting. Turquoise is getting more and more expensive. So if the price is pretty inexpensive, it's probably not turquoise. And black tourmaline necklaces they're not expensive, and you could just wear that. Actually, it's really simple. It's not a pearl, but it's a little bead. It's really helpful, and keep some howlite bracelets. And because remember, with a bracelet, that's why I like the Tibetan bracelets. You have these wrist chakras. You have all this energy that's going up and down your arms. Well, as that energy is coming to you and you're touching things, it passes through this bracelet. Think about the mechanics and the physics of it. As it passes through the bracelet, then that energy is cleaned over and over and over and over again. You're still going to be tired because you walk miles through the park or the mall, or wherever you happen to be,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but your energy is still cleaner.
Wonderful. That's great. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we go or?
Um, that Keep in mind that blessing and prayer keeps your crystals feeling great. Everybody has a down day. I mean, we can't live in this really super crazy world, which is filled with so much fear. Don't fill your crystals with fear. Fill them with light. If you want to fill your home with light and play something really, really beautiful, then your crystals will emanate that, and you will feel physically better because your crystals are giving you a subtle form of healing every day.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you were here, Tina, and I'd love to have you back again.
Oh, well, we'll have to come up with something new to chat about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.